Welcome to A Healthy Curiosity, the podcast that explores what it takes to be well in a busy world with self-care strategies from Chinese medicine. I'm your host, Brody Welch, here to support you on your journey of health, happiness, and personal evolution. Welcome to A Healthy Curiosity. The reason that I do this show is because I really want you, everyone listening, to be enjoying your lives and not just getting through your day. Today, we're going to be talking about actually prioritizing pleasure as part of a two-part series that I'm doing here on Healthy Curiosity about pleasure, sexuality, and intimacy. With me today is Amanda Testa, who is a sex, love, and relationship expert and founder of Find Your Feminine Fire. Her methods bridge ancient tantric tools combined with the latest in neuroscience to help high-performing women ditch unworthiness and embody confidence, radiance, and vitality in all areas of their lives. Amanda, welcome to A Healthy Curiosity.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
I am thrilled to be having this conversation with you because sex is not something we've super explored much on the show, and it can be so important at connecting us with our bodies, with our power. It can be an incredible source of pleasure and a bridge to intimacy with ourselves and our partners. And so I'm really excited to have this conversation. And I think that specifically for women, there is a disconnect between, just cultural expectations of women and sex, and also how this connects to cultural expectations of women to be doing everything else on their list before they can even prioritize things like getting enough sleep, or taking care of themselves. So the idea of prioritizing pleasure is whoa, that is next level self-care. I love it. So I'd love to know first, before we start, how you got into this work.
Yes, thank you for asking. So my journey to this work really started with my own personal healing. And when my daughter was around 18 months old or so, I really just found myself deep in a funk. And I was doing all the things that I thought were quote unquote right for myself. I was exercising, I was eating well, I was involved in my community, I was spending time with friends, everything that I was supposed to be doing. And I just still felt like something was missing, something deep was missing. And of course, I love being a mother and taking care of my beautiful child. But at the same time, I see this all the time too with the women that I work with, is that, I fell into this too, being so busy with taking care of everyone else's needs. And you're really burning the candle at both ends all day. And at the end of the day, the last thing you want is to be touched by anyone, much less your loving partner. Thankfully, my husband and I have always had a pretty good connection, so he was very understanding. But there was still, something missing there. And I just remember one morning I woke up and I just was shuffling to the bathroom, tripping over toys and stuff on the floor, just grumbling to myself, why am I the only one that ever does anything around here? Blah, blah, that type of self-talk. And I went into the mirror and I just looked and I was like, I have no connection with this woman looking back at me. Who the hell is this woman? It's not me. And I just made a vow to myself in that moment that I was going to do whatever it took to find her again. I was going to follow whatever breadcrumbs I came across. And so I happened upon this course on, kind of connecting to your sexuality. I was like, I wonder what that's about. Maybe it'll spice things up in the bedroom. That's literally all I thought. And so I did this work and I was just blown away at the change that I noticed in myself, having this renewed energy and feeling so much more, just feeling good in my skin and waking up with energy and feeling excited about my day. So among other things, I was amazed at the change in myself. And I thought, after learning these tools, I was like, why are women not taught this? Why are we not? This is ridiculous. Every woman needs these tools. Every woman needs to know this learning. And so I decided to teach other women. So I studied for 4 years and got certified. And now here I am. So that's kind of a short version, but that is what led me to this powerful, life-changing work.
I'm curious if there was something in particular that really moved the needle on you reconnecting with you.
Yeah. And I'll share this because I feel, this might be something you've heard of. I know it's a controversial subject. Some people believe in this and some people don't. But I think after my own experience, working somatically in my body to heal trauma and shame is huge. So I did a lot of the practices that I learned to do were reconnecting with my own body. learning to love and appreciate every single inch of my own body, including all the parts that we are taught to be ashamed of as women.
Oh, that's awesome, and it's not a question of whether or not I believe in it. It's in Chinese medicine. It is in and
Yes.
I was trained as a massage therapist before that. There's no question that the body mind, like the mind doesn't have a location, right? It's like so it is really kind of a fallacy to think of the mind and the body as separate. And so being able to infuse every cell with love, appreciation, and have it let go of whatever trauma it may be carrying, whatever shame it might be carrying is absolutely like that is legit.
It's amazing work. And I really love, I follow a lot of the work of, I'm sure you've probably read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, and like Bessel van der Kolk and Pat Ogden and Peter Levine and all these amazing scientists, like really the bringing this to the forefront about how important it is to obviously work with the body as well. And for me, this was kind of new information at the time. And so I think that was the most eye opening piece because I did suffer trauma. I was raped in college and I went to therapy for 7 years. And while, yes, there's such benefits of talk therapy, it needs to go deeper than that, in my opinion. And so I feel like it's so important to bring the body into the equation in this healing journey. And our sexuality is such a secret key, in my opinion. It's like the secret key in personal growth and development because it's the one area we don't talk about. It's the one area that we have been taught to be ashamed of. And there's so much power and wisdom there
Yeah.
if we just learn to kind of shift that mindset.
Yeah. First of all, I'm so sorry that that happened to you. Rape is entirely all too common. And I barely know a woman who hasn't been sexually assaulted or traumatized in some way. It's just absolutely rampant. And so I think this is going to be really valuable information for probably nearly all of our female listeners and really being able to reclaim the body, like, reclaim our own bodies as safe space and sources of pleasure is so important. And yeah, there is. I will hashtag me too on this one. That it's taken a lot of work for me to let go of trauma from sexual assaults from the past, and it's the kind of thing where well, they're just like retapping into sexuality, retapping into appreciation of parts of our bodies and feeling like that they're for us, right? That they're not
Yes,
for just to serve someone else's pleasure agenda.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say that was a huge piece of what I learned too is just, kind of shifting that belief that my sexuality was for me, not for someone else, right? So I appreciate you mentioning that.
Do you separate sex and sexuality? Like in your work, do you have people connect with their sexuality on their own?
Well, I do separate the two because I feel like sex is something you do and sexuality is something that you are. We all have this within us. And it's this beautiful energy that we can have access to. And it can be so nourishing and healing to our systems. We are just not taught that. And then, of course, the act of sex is such a beautiful way to enjoy someone else and to enjoy pleasure and to really form these really deep, beautiful bonds and release all these good, feel good hormones and, feel this connection. So I do view them as two separate pieces.
So when we're talking about sexuality, just accessing this energy that we all have within us, it doesn't matter whether or not we have a partner to practice with. It's something that we can access. I'm curious about a step that you encourage your clients to take in connecting with just the energy of sexuality itself.
Yeah, that's a great question. And you're exactly right. You do not have to have a partner to have amazing sex. You can have amazing sex with yourself. So just note that. And I do, I love to help women cultivate a daily self pleasure practice in some way. So whatever that looks like, and it can be as simple as I think a first step for many women is just learning to be in your body and learning to connect with your senses, because truly that is the basis of your sensuality is enjoying this body that we have, that we get to inhabit with all these delicious things it can enjoy, all the tastes and smells and touches and everything we can hear and see. So that's a number one step I really love to help women is to learn how to tap into their sensuality. And you can do this intentionally throughout your day. You can set up a beautiful ritual around it where you get some I actually have some rituals around that I teach women where you can like kind of get something to please each sense and do a whole thing. Or it can be as simple as just when you're in the shower or taking a bath, like really taking the time to engage your senses through that experience. So maybe you really enjoy the smell of the body soap you're using and enjoy the feel of the warm water and the sound of the water and connecting to your skin and how that feels, and maybe noticing how it feels when the water runs over your mouth and lips and tongue and how that tastes. And so it's taking something that as busy women, we are strapped for time. I get it. So taking something you're already doing and putting intention behind that is powerful.
Absolutely. In my coaching program, we focus on self massage for one of the weeks, and actually there is an episode in the archive of this podcast that I did on with Jen Birchfield on, basically it was on self massage from an Ayurvedic perspective on Abhyanga, and how that can actually help with trauma healing, with confidence, with all kinds of things. But that idea of just, if you're moisturizing yourself, right, you're rubbing your
Yes.
hands over your body every day. You can do that in a very mechanical, like, yep, slap the oil or the lotion on there and, get it done. Or you
Yes.
can use that as like, what if it just took twice as long? And what if you just allowed it to be an experience of like really appreciating touching your body? That can be just one of those intentional flips that I've seen be transformational for people.
I mean, it truly is, because I feel like when you can learn to appreciate your body like that, it is amazing the shift in the perspective of yourself that you'll have. Because personally, I suffered from a really distorted body image for years. I suffered from eating disorders. I literally was disgusted with myself and my body. And that is transformed. And a huge part of that, I tribute to this work of like really learning to love myself from the inside out. And so now I think back to those moments when I would look in the mirror and not see anything I like. And I can relate to if women are in that position, like it feels impossible maybe to think that one day you could love your body, but I assure you that it is possible. And it's just like everything, it's a practice, but you will get there if you're committed and you do the practice.
That's really inspiring. I know that that's the other that's the other thing women are assaulted by on a regular basis, is this notion that our bodies need to be conformed to this totally unrealistic standard. And so, yes, like softening the judgment around how we look at ourselves, being able to cultivate that self-love is so important. Again, do you have a specific thing, like just sort of was it this whole process in general, or was there something where like you realized, oh yeah, like I actually am looking at myself differently now?
Well, I think too, like you mentioned, is like when you take that time to appreciate your body on a daily basis, it's a powerful practice and it seems simple, but your brain starts to be rewired in how you think about yourself when you look at yourself, when you can actually enjoy the experience of being in a body. And when you really learn about your anatomy and how to turn yourself on and all the amazing pleasure that your body is capable of, you have this newfound respect and like, holy moly, my body is flipping amazing. It's pretty freaking radical. And so I think once you get into that understanding and ability, then it's a lot harder to hate on yourself from that place.
Really true. Really true. I think also just like what you're talking about speaks to this idea of getting away from how it looks and into what it does and how it
Mhm.
feels, and like just being able to be in an experience without, that really you're talking about an experience where you are truly in your body as opposed to judging your body. Because if you're in a place of judgment, you've created separation.
Exactly. I mean, it's really no wonder that we struggle because, as you mentioned, we're bombarded with these messages from a young age that, we're not enough, or, everywhere you go, you can't help but see magazines or be influenced by this quote unquote normal standard of beauty that is really warped and untrue. And so I think that it's no wonder that we struggle. It's like, you can't, if your hair is curly, there's someone out there telling you it needs to be straight. If your butt's too big, your butt's too small, your breasts are too big, your breasts are too small, like you need to look this way, you need to look that way. Look, there's really no winning, right?
Yeah, well, and there's
When-
like there's so many specialized tools for every
oh,
part of your body to look
mhm,
different. And it's like, and when you think about like how much money women invest in trying to look better as opposed to trying to feel better, it's
mhm,
kind of crazy.
truly.
This episode is brought to you by the coaching branch of brodywelch.com. If you are interested in getting off of your plateau, I have 3 opportunities for you. One is to join a community of like-minded people who similarly want to get more calm, more confident, be in the bodies that they love, show up differently in the world, and start really living from their truth. My Level Up community starts again in January. And if you're interested, you can head to brodywelch.com, Level Up page, and apply. Also, there is room in the Mexico retreat in February for a few more people. So if you could use a retreat that gets you connected to yourself, as well as giving you tons of self-care tools for your toolbox going forward, check that out as well. And 3, I'm opening up time in my schedule for a handful of the right one-on-one clients for coaching for people who are interested in getting off their plateau with kind of a combination of both health coaching and life coaching from a Chinese medicine framework. So again, all the self-care tools and empowerment, support, accountability that you could get in a group, but with some more personalized recommendations from me. And if you're interested, head to brodywelch.com, go to the Level Up page and apply to have a conversation with me, and we'll see if it's a good fit. Now back to the show. You talk about how prioritizing your own pleasure can actually strengthen relationships. I'd love for you to get into that a little bit with us.
I'd love to. And this is a really huge key because, again, as women, we're conditioned that we come last. You got to be a martyr to be a good mother, or, all the messaging that we received. And maybe that might not be true in your case, but for the most part, a lot of the time, women struggle with putting themselves on the list at all. And I feel like a number one key in this is connecting to what it is you actually even want. Like, what do you desire? When was the last time you sat down and thought about that? And for many women, that is a huge, eye opener. I have no clue what I really want. What feels good to me? I don't know. What is pleasure to me? I couldn't tell you. And so I would invite you to spend some time doing that, and even setting a timer for 10 minutes and making a list of things that bring you joy. What makes you happy? What do you desire? Even if it's and I love around this exercise is to let yourself have fun and imagine, and don't censor your thoughts. Don't let that part of you that says, oh, that's not realistic or whatever. Don't let that part have a say in this game. You are just having fun with this experience. And really, I think after about 10 minutes, then you get down to the truth of what is something that's important to you, and allowing yourself, maybe one of the things on the list was to take a bath, or maybe one of the things on the list was to get a cup of coffee. I mean, if it's something small, you can start there, and realizing the more you give yourself what you want, you're like, wow, I am worthy of these things. And the less you expect it from others, because I think a lot of where resentment comes in, especially in relationship, especially when you're busy, and if you have a family on top of that too, there's a lot of resentment around who's doing what and who's holding more of the load. And I think when you are coming at that relationship from the place of, I need to give something to get something, you want to kind of shift that. But especially for the women thinking that, you're doing all these things all day, you're so busy, you're never doing anything for yourself. When your partner wants something, are you going to be happy to give that to them? Or are you going to, is the part of you that wants to open and surrender going to be ready to play?
Right. Probably not. It really is that idea of resentment and self-care being sort of inversely proportional. The more you neglect your own needs, the more resentment you're going to have.
Exactly.
So many people, what you were saying about just feeling like you have to take care of everyone else before prioritizing yourself. I actually have the right to take care of yourself manifesto, suitable for printing and framing, available on my website at
I love your
brodywelch.com.
manifesto too.
Yeah,
Awesome.
it's really, and it seems like what you're saying is maybe one of the things that could be added to that manifesto is consider your desires and take them seriously.
Exactly, because that's our connection to our intuition. Like what we want, wants us as well. And when we give ourselves an opportunity to allow ourselves to want and to desire, it's going to keep you going down the path you want to be on. Because, if you just constantly shut down your desires, you're going to be unfulfilled and you're going to be, like we just talked about, resentful. And, the people closest to you are going to not get the best of you. And so I truly believe like when you start to fill this pleasure tank, and I love teaching women to create a daily pleasure journal. So it can be as simple as writing down anything that day that gave you pleasure. Maybe it was that you enjoyed the sun on your skin when you were driving to work. It can be so simple. Or maybe it's something more extravagant, like maybe it's a day that you got a pedicure or something fancy, right? Or maybe it's just a day where you listened to yourself and ate when you were hungry and went to the bathroom when you needed to pee, right? I can think as a mom,
The
there was time,
simple
right?
honoring of the body, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
and yet there's plenty of people for whom that is a stretch.
Exactly. And so that's why I like to keep it small and like every day write down the things that give you pleasure. And that's going to start to build. And then your mind's going to start to gravitate to those things that give you pleasure. And the more that you fill with this pleasure, the more your body starts to change. I mean, and then you come at things from a more resourced place so that you can respond versus react. I like to say, for example, as a parent, a lot of times when you're having that moment where you're just like, there's nothing left, you're going to yell and scream at your kids, or you're going to snap at your partner. And then when you're from a resource place, you're going to be able to take that breath and be able to calm that amygdala, let your cortical brain come on board and start thinking like, okay, how's the best way to respond to the situation to get the best possible outcome? Which when you don't have that reservoir, you're not going to be able to do that.
Absolutely. And speaking of reservoirs, a lot of people, there's that study that says that 1 in 5 women would rather watch TV than have sex. And it's like, I have no problem believing that because women are often so exhausted that they don't feel like they have anything left at the end of the day. And basically, as we deplete our reserves of our energy, in Chinese medicine, that's part of the kidney system, which is also kind of our hormonal reservoir and is kind of the root of sexual desire, libido, as well as fertility and things like that. So just that there's a direct connection between like, yeah, we've got to actually do less. We've got to actually not be in depletion mode if we're going to want there to be any energy left over for sexuality.
Exactly. And I think too, some of the problem is that we have not been properly educated on how to have good sex. And if it's not something that you're enjoying, why would you want to do it?
Oh, let's talk about that too, because there is like it is, yeah, that is astonishing to me how much sex education is really about disease avoidance, like and rather than the kind of sex that most people end up having for most of their lives, which is for pleasure and not reproduction. And of course, like what's portrayed in movies and on TV is that that women are never touching themselves during sex, and yet at least 30% of us absolutely need that in order to orgasm in heterosexual penis and vagina sex. So it's the kind of thing where like, yeah, like it is just the basics aren't even out there.
Right. And so it's no wonder that we struggle because we've never been taught. And I think there's also way too many episodes of people having penetration before they're ready when you're speaking to the penis and vagina sex. It's so true. It's like for a lot of women, I mean, honestly, it could take an average like 30 to 40 minutes for your body to be fully engorged and ready, and all the woman's erectile tissue like ready for penetration. And, you know, and let's be honest, I think the average sexual encounter is maybe 12 minutes, which is not ideal. I mean, and I'm not to say that whatever is working for you, if you're happy and your relationship's working and you are both happy with what's going on, then that's amazing. Cause that's really I love Emily Nagoski, one of my favorite sex educators, says this. She's like, pleasure is the measure. So if you are having your needs met and you're happy and your partner's happy, then great. If not, and you are struggling and you want more pleasure, then that's something to think about is like learning and making it be something that you can do together in a non-judgmental way. Because again, it's not something, and especially if you've been in a long term relationship and all of a sudden you're like, sex sucks. That's not going to go well, right?
Right. Not the most
It's
constructive way
like,
of
no,
approaching that
so
conversation.
not at all. So
Uh-huh.
you want to, kind of approach it in a way where you can just start to open communication. And I think that's the number one step too with a partner is just learning to communicate your needs more and just allowing time to be intimate without judging each other. So maybe you just have, like, say you create a night and you're just going to like have fun and be curious and like kids in a sandbox, just explore and play. And you can be like, no, that doesn't feel good. Yes, that feels amazing. Keep doing that. And then, at the end, you can say, what did you really love about that? And like recapping at the end of an experience can be a really good tool. You can be like, oh my God, that was so awesome. And really only focusing on the positives. So
Yeah,
not
right. Like
really,
this was a highlight. Yes, do
yeah.
more of that.
Exactly, because I think a lot of times, especially in longer term relationships, one or the other partner may be afraid to bring something to the table for fear of being judged. And so when you can start to create that space of play and bringing in that non judgment around trying new things, you might like some things, you might not like some things, and that's okay. But you're going to just, if when you're with someone that you're consensually having sex with that you admire and love, let it be a fun experience. And so the more you can try new things and kind of expand your vocabulary, so to speak, when it comes to sexual experiences, the more connected you'll be, the more fun you'll have. And also understanding that sex can be more than just for pleasure. I think that's another thing we're conditioned that we always see on TV and this, that, and the other, but it can also be a beautiful space for whatever needs to be released. So maybe you cry sometimes, and that's okay. And that's not weird to have a partner cry during
Oh,
sex. Like, a
yeah.
lot can come up, so much emotion, so much stuff is held in our tissues, like you mentioned. And so when you're having sex and an emotional release comes up, you want to, like, and especially if you experience trauma, like teaching your partner to learn to hold you through that, let you complete a stress cycle and go back to connection is so key. And so I feel like, and also if you're angry, it's sometimes really fun to just like come at it from that angry place and let those emotions flow. And then eventually they'll flow through and then you can get to pleasure. And it's just a fun way to express a lot of different emotions. And
Oh, yeah. I love that you're bringing that up because it really is true, right? Like a sexual encounter can move a whole lot of energy, especially in the lower body, and it can wake up a lot of dormant energy. And so, yeah, that idea of crying, of screaming, of yelling, of laughing, like letting emotions, like emotions are just chi, they're just energy that's in the body. And so allowing yourself to access that without any judgment and letting it move through, and maybe even educating your partner of like, this is just chi moving, it's nothing to get into right now, like that.
exactly.
That so it doesn't necessarily ruin the flow or the mood, but just being able to move through can be tremendously healing.
Yes.
What else can we learn from ancient practices? I know that, like, well, this show, we focus on ancient traditions from Chinese medicine and from Ayurveda and yoga. And certainly the Taoists were really into sexology. And of course, like, Tantra is a whole lot more than just sex, but it certainly does have its sexual practices. What do you feel like people could really benefit from knowing?
Well, I think one of the keys here, which I love to talk about, is, really learning to cultivate your own sexual energy for your own nourishment, because we all have access to this energy source, like literally at our fingertips, literally. And so it's like learning to use that turn on that you can cultivate. And, we have like our sexual energy, our jing, it's like this beautiful energy we can cultivate. And then the more you learn to activate that, and even just right now, if you're sitting, I don't know it's okay if I walk you through a quick little
Sure. Yeah,
exercise.
absolutely.
But if you're in a place where you can do this, you could probably even do it if you're driving. But, if you're a woman and you start to like just squeeze your pelvic floor muscles, like kind of rapidly squeeze them and release them, and just notice if you feel any energy, any tingling happening there. Then you can kind of take that little tingle and just kind of visualize that as like a little ball of energy, so to speak. And just kind of let that kind of rise up through your lower belly, over up your front of your body, just like sliding up the front of your body. Just visualize it going up through the roof of your mouth. You can touch the tongue to the roof of your mouth, kind of let the energy flow through your top of your head, and then kind of letting that energy, just kind of let that ball of energy slowly roll back down the back of your head, back down your spine, through the perineum, back up to the cervix. And then you can just allow that little circuit to go. And if you just kind of notice how you feel, if you can connect to that energy.
That's a version of the microcosmic
Yes.
orbit practice in
Hmm.
Qigong. the suggestion was that the ball is red, kind of like the rising sun. So if that's a useful thing to add to your visual, feel free to do that as well, those listening at home. And that especially for women, taking the ball up the front and down the back of the body can be really useful in countering things like prolapse and, just the things that sink in the front of the body, and, allowing that it's the front of the body's yin and the back is yang. It's sort of, it's reverse of the way that a lot of people teach the microcosmic orbit, because it's a male dominated tradition.
And I like to say, if you feel like you need more yin, if you want that, you can go up the front. If you feel like you need more fire, more yang, then go up the back. So and the beautiful thing is, like, I like to kind of simplify it, but you can go a lot more in depth with that practice. But just to kind of, just get a taste of what it's like. And, the more you work with this energy, the more you can learn to kind of refine it. And it's a practice, but it's amazing when you can start to activate that and then let it go up to your heart and become chi, and then let it go up to your crown and become spiritual energy, Shin. It's beautiful practice, and it's amazing. It doesn't take long for your body to learn these tools. And it's like anything, it's a learned skill. So just doing the practice, and if you are, intent on the connection to that energy, you'll get it pretty quickly. And it's amazing. It's so nourishing. And like, when you have this energy in your body, you can learn to allow it to nourish your cells and your bones and your tissues. Like, pleasure literally can be medicine for your body.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I love that you brought that up and led us through that practice. That was awesome. So, Amanda, if people are wanting to learn more about your work, where would you have them go?
Yes, you can find me at my website. It's amandatesta.com. And I also have, I mentioned earlier, that sensuality practice. If you wanted to get that in more detail, you can get that on my website. And then also I have a podcast as well called Find Your Feminine Fire, where I talk a lot more in depth about all these fun topics around sex, love, and relationships. And you can also find me on Facebook. I have a group called Find Your Feminine Fire. So those are the places to find me.
All right. I'll make sure those get into the show notes. And before we wrap it up today, do you have any last final words of advice for women out there who are wanting to connect with their sexuality, pleasure, intimacy, anything that we haven't talked about?
I would just like to share that, just knowing that you're already perfectly whole exactly as you are. And we all have this within us. It's just normal that daily stress and the environment that we live in and the culture that we live in just dampers it and kind of teaches us not to let that be activated and let that shine like it's meant to. So I would just want to share that, you have this within you, and it's easy to access, and just allowing yourself to be curious and kind of allowing yourself to enjoy it.
Such excellent words of advice. Amanda Testa, thank you so much for joining me today for this great and juicy conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening today. For more episodes of A Healthy Curiosity, you can visit the iTunes store. If you appreciated today's show, please leave us a review. This helps other people to find the podcast. You could also head to brodywelch.com, where you can find free self-care resources, learn more about Chinese medicine, and let me know what you'd like to hear about on future episodes. I'd love to hear from you. Till next time, be good to yourself.